Next, we learn how to use the notification system so that when the app is running or in the background, if the user has changed the settings or the preferences, the app will know and use those new settings and preferences. As I mentioned before, one way to enable the user to change and save preferences is inside the Settings app. You set up the preferences in a settings bundle that you add to your project, and the Settings app uses that settings bundle. So what happens when the user quits the app? Well, the app doesn't really terminate. Instead, it goes into the background and becomes inactive. And while your app is sitting there in the background, life goes on, and the user may have done something that impacts your app, such as changing the settings in the Settings app. Fortunately, iOS versions 4 and newer versions provides this notification system for your app to find out what has happened while it dreams of electric sheep. If your app receives the NS User Defaults Did Change notification, the appropriate response would be for your app to reload the settings data and behave appropriately. To get that notification, you need to register for the NS User Defaults Did Change notifications message. And you do that here in the My World App Delegate file in the application Did Finish Launching with Options method. So let's add this notification system first to myworldappdelegate.h. Here we can add the declaration set defaults NS notification asterisk notification. So here in the header file, we're notifying the compiler that this set defaults is going to be coming down the pike. Now we move on to myworldappdelegate.m. Here we have to now import the constants file that we just described. As you recall, the constants.h file contains our key definitions. So now we've imported constants.h into the myworldappdelegate, and we can now use these keys with NSUserDefaults to save and retrieve the user preferences. And we'll do that in the application Did Finish Launching with Options method, where conveniently Apple has put a comment in the template telling us where the override point is for customizing the app after the launch. So here we're simply going to customize the app right here. And we're going to start by adding that if condition we showed earlier. If NSUserDefaults standard user defaults, close bracket, object for key, keywords of wisdom, close bracket, close parentheses. And we're going to put in brackets to say what will happen if. Now what this does is it checks to see whether keywords of wisdom has been set and moved into NSUserDefaults. You see, the Settings app, or the Flipside view, which we're also going to add code to do the same thing, moves the user's preferences into NSUserDefaults, but only after the application runs for the first time. Settings will, however, update preferences in NSUserDefaults if the user makes any changes. So if the settings have not been moved into NSUserDefaults yet, the code we want to do will set the initial preference value of Peace on Earth for Falling Words, and it will set the speed setting. So let's write that code. NSUserDefaults, standard user default, set object at Peace on Earth as our string. Now we already have a for key, and we type for key words of wisdom. Close bracket, semicolon. Okay, for main view controller, falling words. We also want that to be at Peace on Earth at the beginning. And now we want to set the speed of NSUserDefaults, standard user defaults, set double for an average of 10. That would be the middle of the slider for key K speed. And we want main view controller speed to be equal to K max speed minus 10.0. So once again, if the settings have not been moved into NSUserDefaults, then we use the initial preference values of Peace on Earth, a speed of 10, and a K max speed minus 10 for the actual speed. Now you'll notice we have two errors happening already. Let's look at the first one. It says the property falling words is not found. Let's click on that and get a better description and close this for a second. The property falling words is not found on the object of type main view controller. The same with speed. These two properties need to be defined in main view controller, as you shall see coming up. But for now, we'll leave them the way they are. Now, what if the settings have been moved into NSUserDefaults? We need to send ourself the message self set defaults nil. This is the same message you sign up to be sent when you register for the NS User Defaults did change notification message. In this case, we use nil as the argument because it isn't coming from the notification center. So we type else self set defaults nil, close bracket, semicolon, void NS notification equals notification notif, and self set defaults notif. Okay. And we have a semicolon here for the end of the else. Finally, notification center default center. We want to add a observer for name NS user defaults did change notification. Object nil, Q nil, using block set defaults. So really what's going on here is if the settings have been moved into NS user defaults, you send yourself the message self set defaults nil. This is the same message you sign up to be sent when you register for the NS user defaults did change notification message. In that case, you use nil as the argument because it isn't coming from the notification center with a notification. And we also have to add the set defaults message to set falling words and main view controller speed to whatever the user preference is. Now we need to define the set defaults method so that we can set falling words and main view controller speed to whatever the user preference actually is. To do that, we start with void set defaults notification star notification. And we type our opening bracket and it fills in the closing bracket for us. So now we're going to do main view controller falling words. Now, of course, we don't have the property set yet, but we will soon. NS user defaults. All we want is NS user defaults, so we select that. Standard user defaults. String for key is K words of wisdom. Close bracket, semicolon. And main view controller speed, again, a property we need to set. K max speed minus NS user defaults, standard user default, double for key K speed. Close bracket, semicolon. And of course, because we haven't defined those properties yet in main view controller, we're still getting those two errors. As you'll see, those errors will disappear as we define the properties. But now, at least this part of the app is ready to grab the preference settings from the settings app or from the flipside view. Even though the app is not ready to use them yet, we still have to change the settings in the main view, add the property declarations, and we need to add the code that builds a settings section for our app in the settings app. And we'll also have to add the code to the flipside view that captures the user preference settings.